Welcome to our kitchen. Today we prepare an early medieval pork stew from a 6th century book, Anthimus De Observatione Ciborum. We start with the ingredients. We need pork loin, white wine vinegar, honey, leeks, celery, and black pepper. But first, an announcement. This source, with our translation, commentary and glossary, is now available for pre-order on Amazon in English and Italian. The title is De Observatione Ciborum, Early Medieval Recipes at the Court of the Franks. Being a text written by a Byzantine physician, Anthimus, who worked as an ambassador at the court of Theodoric, the king of the Franks. The book will be available in print and ebook editions on 21 November. On Amazon you also find our two previous books, Ancient Roman Cooking and Registrum Coquine, a medieval cookbook. You find all the links in the description below. We cut the meat and simmer it with 2 pinches of salt. This book is halfway between a treatise of dietetics and a cookbook, in which you find several recipes specifically dedicated to the Franks, despite the fact that the author is Byzantine, as well as suggestions about how to cook the food. According to ancient dietetics, the diet must change, not only based on the complexion and age, but also on the place in which someone lives. As a consequence, the proper diet for a Frank is different than the one for a Greek. For example, according to Anthimus, raw laredum, which is a cured pork fatback, is unsuitable for the Mediterranean peoples, but is good for a Frank, who uses it as a sort of medicine, in the same way as Cervesia ale, which is for the Franks, like a sort of tisana, an ancient Greek medicinal remedy. To know more about tisana in the ancient world, check out our video for tisana barrica. You find the link in the description below. Meanwhile, we grind the black pepper, chop the leek and mince the celery tops. The preference of the Franks for animal fats, such as laredum and butter, will be fundamental in the late medieval cooking, whereas these ingredients are rare in ancient high-end cooking, being pork fatback considered a plebeian food, suitable, for example, for the legionaries, and butter instead is seen as a barbarian condiment. To know more about the diet of the legionaries, check out our video linked in the description below. Despite the differences, for example the preference for meat instead of fish, that would be also typical of late medieval cuisine, there are many similarities between the diet of the Franks and the alimentations of the Greeks and Romans. Some aliments mentioned by Anthimus are indeed very common in the antiquity, such as melca or oxygala, which is a sort of curdle or yogurt, as well as oxymeli, a mixture of vinegar and honey, or garum. The kinds of meat are the same: beef, mutton, pork, poultry, game meat, but also birds as partridge, dove, crane and peacock, considered delicacies in ancient Rome and in the late Middle Ages. In this book, we find both complete recipes and recommendations about how to prepare the foods in the healthiest way. In the past, we prepared from this source a frutum and a pork roast with lentils and sumac. This time instead, we chose a recipe for pork iucellum, a term that means stew or sauce, and may be simple or complex, depending on the kind of meat used. The author provides a complete recipe for a complex iucellum that requires vinegar, leek, pennyroyal, celery root or fennel, pepper, cloves, costus and lavender. We prepared our pork with a simple iucellum following Anthimus directions and using some of these ingredients with the addition of celery leaves, mentioned among a list of vegetables that can be added to whichever kind of food during the cooking, including leek, cilantro, and dill. If we want to follow Anthimus directions, we should avoid garum to dress pork, using exclusively salt. The mention of garum is, however, very interesting, because it means that the Franks used garum as commonly as ancient Romans and Greeks. When the meat is almost cooked through, we add a bit of vinegar and honey, the leek and celery, and the black pepper. The cooking time changes depending on the cut of meat. We cooked it for about 50 minutes. The complete recipe that Anthimus provides for beef requires cooking the meat completely, then adding the other ingredients and cooking it again for 1 hour. You may cook the meat for a very long time, adding the vegetables still whole or mince them finely, as we did here, and cook it for a shorter time. It is up to your taste. There are plenty of possible variants to prepare a meat stew following Anthimus' book, combining the various ingredients mentioned before in the way you prefer. The suitable kinds of meat are, for example, mutton, chicken, or lamb, in addition to beef. In our book, you find some suggestions about how to interpret the recipes following the methods that derive from ancient cooking, to which Anthimus refers. This dish turned out savory and flavorful with celery and leek, slightly sweet and sour, and delicious despite its simplicity. We paired it with mead and barley polenta. To read further translations of historical sources, check out our Patreon page. To support our work, you can also buy us a beer or purchase our merchandise. You find all the links in the description below. If you're interested in ancient foods and flavors, subscribe our channel and consider supporting us on Patreon.